Greetings, podcast listeners, and welcome to another episode of All Things Thor. I'm your host, Kurt Schneider, and on this episode, we have a special guest joining us. Rick Kess is an artist, sculptor, model maker, and much more. He's worked in film, theme park attraction design, and show production at Walt Disney Imagineering, and was part of the Journey to the Center of the Earth attraction team with Tom. We're happy to have him join us as our first guest on All Things Thor. We did have a small audio issue, so there's a little bit of an echo on Rick's and Tom's microphones for these recordings, but we have fixed that going forward, so bear with us if you will. I think the conversation will certainly outweigh the detraction of having that small audio glitch. So without further ado, let me hand it over to Rick Kess, Tom Thor Thordarson, and of course myself, Kurt Schneider, in an episode called All Things Thor, Rick Kess and Imagineering. Welcome to you both, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to speak with both of you and see you. This is our latest episode of All Things Thor, a podcast about all things Thor and all those associated with Thor, perhaps. So we have Rick Kess and we have Tom, and they're going to take us on hopefully I know it won't be hopefully, an interesting audio adventure today. The trials and tribulations of being creative people in the industry of being creative. There you go.
Well, thank you for the introduction, and I'm honored to be here. And I'm in the presence of the master here. So this is going to be fun.
Well, likewise. I think I've always said that there's this sort of sixth sense, not sick, but a sixth sense that creative people have about other creative people, and you kind of almost communicate on a sort of a wavelength or a frequency, that a lot of other people may not pick up on or understand, but it's like coming across somebody and meeting them for the first time, and they feel like an old friend, they feel like a familiar face and a familiar soul. And I know that's always been my perception with Rick since we first started working together at Imagineering, and we along with the projects we were working on, I know we always did a lot of side talk about fun ideas and shared stories of other parts of our careers, and the fun and the challenges, and yet sometimes the frustrations, and so that's part of how Rick and I got to be friends. And but Rick, do you want to touch on just like right before you got involved with Imagineering? You were. Am I correct in that it was in the film industry?
Yes, correct. Yeah. At the time, I had finished up working with two amazing other model makers on Beetlejuice, and I'd moved over to this one movie, which honest with you, I don't even know the name. I've never seen it, but it was a giant rat movie, and I made some of my best miniatures for that movie, but in the middle of that, or actually towards the end of my filming part, I got a call from Imagineering that wanted to know if I wanted in and interview. So it was a weird time. I'm going to say the late 80s, because historically, Disney, or especially Imagineering, didn't really care for movie people. They said we were lazy and wanted too much money.
Yeah.
Which is funny because if you go to a movie studio to work on a film and you say that you were at Imagineering, they say, "Oh, you guys are late. Too much money." We had two big people out there throwing rocks at each other. So it was, but at the time that I got called in, there was a gentleman that I had worked on projects around. I met him like a couple of times, Gene Rizzardi. And he was from the movie, and he turned out to be the manager of the model shop. Now, he didn't last that long after I was there. But basically, he's the reason I got in, because they were a little more open then to people with film experience. And it just so happened that I was actually able to read blueprints where a lot of them. So,
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I was put into the model shop. I think my first endeavor there, they put me on the I guess the artifact mount for the Gene Autry Museum.
Oh, sure.
Acrylic mount for that. They came out wonderful, and man, what a great learning experience.
Yeah, those are great.
But I remember the first day I was there, first week, man, my everything was up in my throat, because this was Imagineering. This is where all the heavyweights came to roost. And I was there for about 2 weeks, and I said, "Y'all guys are making stuff up as you go, aren't you?" And that's pretty much what it was. And and I stayed there for, I'm gonna say 6 years. I was in the model shop, and towards the end, I was kind of going back and forth between model shop and doing production design. I can remember working on Tom's Journey to the Center of the Earth model.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And then I was working also on 20,000 League for Tokyo. And then I think I started to work stuff for Disney California. But that wasn't really very interesting. I kept telling everybody we could put a big Mickey Mouse sign over the parking lot and call it theme. But yeah, I had some interesting experiences at WDI, and I don't think I'm afraid of one of them. They were some amazing. And I think I got to talk with Tom, and quite possibly on most I got to talk to him was on the Journey to the Center of the Earth project. But I remember I'd see him in the hallway, and it was tough to get to him because all the girls were following him. But
they were just project managers, keeping on my ass is all they were.
That's all they were. Okay, fair enough.
Eye on you.
But I remember probably I'd been asked what my favorite thing to work on at WDI was. And actually, there's two. The first one was when Marty Sklar called me into the office and told me that Mickey Steinberg said the guard shaft did not have feet on the support posts, and he asked me if I would come up with some feet for it. So I made dwarf shoe, and Mickey pulled the ceiling up. And it was out there on the guard shack on Flower Street for a long time. But during that time, also, I got to work with Rolly Crump on Food Rocks for Epcot.
Oh yeah, great show.
And that was there was a wonderful illustrator, Rennie Marquez, his name was.
Yes.
And absolutely wonderful. I still have one of her paintings. I love it. Anyway, she would come up with these little characters, and that I would bring them to life in full size. So I would sculpt them out. I was doing giant paper sculptures, basically.
Wow.
And Rolly would come out and go absolutely gaga over them. He loved them. So he was absolutely a wonderful man to work with. I absolutely loved that guy. And we became pretty good friends, too. Anyway, they ended up taking my prototype paper sculptures to Mapo, and they built them from that. They used them as the patterns.
Well, I believe it.
All the animated characters. And so I was kind of tossed. That was one of my first times getting tossed into the production design thing, and had to go out to Florida and do the install. And I was. So that was probably my favorite, just because I worked with Rolly Crump. I heard so much about him before, and oh my God, it was incredible. There was some people there.
Had to be.
There was some very, very trying people too, but yeah. I mean, I don't know how many people have ever tried to build a model from a cocktail napkin drawing that came back that time, and they said, "Hey, can you build this?"
Well, and that was before. Everyone forgets now that we didn't have Photoshop and much. Other than the engineering department was working on CAD all the time, and I was fascinated by that they could do three-dimensional models when they were testing engineering functions and stuff. But most of us designers, or all of us, we were working with whatever we had, just like you're saying. I mean, I'd work with some plasticine clay that I had either gotten from Disney or that I took from home, and sometimes I'd kit bash a bunch of my models that I didn't finish and stuck them together, and super sculpey and wax and whatever I could work with to do maquettes and different things like that. But you just had to go straight from your brain to your hand, and there were no machines to help you out in between. And some of the most creative, I think, soulful things that the company has ever created were conceptualized that way.
Absolutely. And one of the things I always loved about Rolly Crump was the fact that he honestly believed that the model sells the project.
Yeah.
Because it's 3D, because it's not 3D on a screen, it's right in front of you.
Right in front of you.
Look at it, move things around, adjust things. We had wonderful painters come in and do the initial models. It was awesome stuff. But it was very much like, oh my gosh, I need something over here. Hey, can I borrow your eraser? I want to make a building out of it.
Yeah.
So it was available to grab, to use.
Yeah.
And it was quite fun. And I remember, right after the Gene Autry meeting, they came down to everybody in the model shop and said, "Okay, all you guys that are recently hired, which I was one, we don't have anything going on at the moment. So, but they're getting ready to do the show production. We're at Kahunga, which was the show production place, and so anybody that was willing to go on over there, you're welcome to do that and hang on to you that way." So I think there was a couple of us. I think Steve Frankenberger, myself, I think Robert Parsono, and there was some lady that was with us too. But I told him, I said, "Oh my gosh, you mean it's like construction indoors, making fun stuff?" Wow, yeah, I'm in. And a lot of people, it was funny, but I remember we lost quite a few guys because it's hard for some creatives to go from small, or an illustration in your case, to the big thing.
Sure.
They can't make the leap to hyperspace, so to speak.
Scale it. Yeah.
And I have encountered that in so many arenas where there's guys that sculpt really big things that are absolutely wonderful, but you give them something small and they cannot do it.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah.
And then too, there were a lot of people who couldn't handle, let's say, the difference between reductive or additive sculpting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was I was always really happy that I could do that, and I stayed busy. And so I went over there and we worked on Delta Dream Flight.
Oh yeah, great ride.
And I made quite a few props and models for that. Matter of fact, I think one of them's still there in Florida, the giant snow walker from Star Wars. Robert and I did the head for that.
Okay. Yeah, so, I can picture it exactly.
But just I have a lot of mixed feelings sometimes about my time at Imagineering, because once they started to get the bean counters designing things, a lot of the not just the creativity, but a lot of the inspiration and drive to create something good was gone.
Yeah, it took the wind out of
a lot
sales.
Of people.
Yeah, I know.
Nice, you got to cut your budget in half. Well, that'll leave us with the front door and the back door.
Yeah.
So that's
it
was very tough during those times, and it was very frustrating. And I don't know about you, Tom, but I've always had this thing in the back of my mind. I always told people when I go there, I'm here as long as it's fun.
Yeah.
And when it stops,
that's so funny, because that's what Kurt and I say about all the time about this podcast. And he said, when we decided to do it, we said, let's just do it as long as it's fun.
As long as it's fun. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. No, once that element is gone, then everything just goes right down.
And starts to cave in on itself. Yeah.
Yep. And even more so when it's your job. I mean, when you have to get up and punch the clock every day, and you're walking through the door and going, that's the worst.
And and I've been really fortunate. Like Tom, I've been really fortunate to find places to go to work at places that, oh my God, this is like I can't wait to go to work the next day.
Me too.
And I don't leave it at work. I bring it home with me, which is probably terrible, but and then I got to a point where I would be sculpting all day long, and then I would come home. I didn't want to sculpt anymore, so I started drawing and painting again. And then when I got to a point where I was doing a lot of painting at work, I'd come home and I'd sculpt some more.
Yeah.
So I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of those outlets. And I've always admired Tom, because he always has one of those things going on, whether 3D or 2D or 4D. Sometimes it's all just up in the head, but it's always fun.
Yeah. or ADHD.
Or ADHD. There you go.
No, I totally relate to that, and in part of this series, I kind of get into my experiences from stepping in my mind without any bias, but just as an observer who could sit in a chair behind my nose, and my two eyes being a lens and my ears being a couple of speakers, when I spent my time at Imagineering. And that's kind of the story I've been telling so far, and we'll be finishing up with it pretty soon, because I don't want to go on and on and on forever. But I observed a lot of those things, and some of those changes, and I understand it's changed even more. But that when I went in there very in my sort of sense, compared to what people told me later, very naive. I had a very naive idea as to what my role was and to what Imagineering was. And it was all based on everything that I saw Walt Disney do, that I was available to see, and all the stories that I had heard, countless stories from people who worked with him in the very beginning, who would sit and I'd listen to for hours. Bob Gurr, Colin Campbell, anyone who came through Sequoia when I was working there, I'd talk to them. And I always got the impression that the creative was the driving force, and that Walt's idea, of course, we all know about this and heard about the banter and battles between Walt and his brother, and finance versus creative. But Walt took the idea that I had at Imagineering. Okay, what can I do to create a caliber of which will exist nowhere else other than out of Walt Disney Imagineering, and that Walt himself would say, "I don't care what it costs. We're gonna figure out how to raise the money, not dilute the intensity and the incredible idea that we've come up with." So it was a reverse type of engineering, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's how he got into sponsorships, and that's how he insisted on certain things being, and you've got to be, as as a designer, you can't be totally irresponsible. You can't say, well, I want everyone to defy gravity as they go through this experience.
No, exactly.
I mean, you have to have some common sense and some respect for reason, but it is my understanding and my final experiences there was that it was completely reversed, and so we were always trying to dilute the idea and figure out how to back into making things happen with sometimes rubber bands and paper clips, So, but anyway, but for the most part, the pixie dust lasted a fairly long time for me until it was finally leaked out. But it really, I went in there just glowing. I was like you, I couldn't wait to get to work, and I felt Walt everywhere. I felt like, he must have walked down that hallway right there. He must have come in here and checked on the animatronic figures when they were building them for the pirates. And like you said, you think to yourself, you can't help but feel the spirit and the energy of the place, and it drives you. It would drive me,
Mm-hmm.
So, but
I think for me, one of the saddest parts was going in with that and the day and all the pixie dust and the whole thing, that everybody didn't have it.
Oh,
yes, you're right.
Some people were actually there for career.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they were many times part of the creative team. And that was always kind of disappointing when you'd find that, okay, here you were busy doing this and that and the other thing, trying to get stuff done and ready for the next meeting. And some of those people would be off doing the schmooze.
Yeah.
It was about the career. But for the most part, I mean, you tended, and I know you did this too, you tended to actually gravitate towards the people, though, that were of like mind.
Yeah.
You wanted to do that just because, man, I thrived on that. People say, oh yeah, you can lock yourself in your studio and you can do all sorts of creative things. But I got to tell you, you miss some of the creative juices not being around other creatives.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I think you miss it, and it's just like you were saying earlier. It's an energy. It's something that flows in and around. The force.
Yeah.
Through you. But having people around you, I mean, during COVID, I locked myself in my little studio and paint and drew all the time, and I was having a great time.
Yeah.
And towards the end, I realized I actually miss being around people that talk silly and do things like I do.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's definite merit to that, and I think that Kurt and I were talking about this. Again, it kind of goes back to, people have said to me before, oh, well, you happen to be talented. Some people are born talented, some people are not. And also, you happen to be born with the ability to draw, while other people are born maybe with musical inclination and everything. And I don't know how I feel about that. I know one thing is true, is certain people are born with an inherent obsession to see the magic in the world and the fantasy and the enchantment in the world around them. And then if you have that as the nucleus of what you're all about, I call that a creative person. Then you learn a language to express it. It might be you become a musician. It might be because you become a fine artist. It might be you become a writer or an actor. It's you try to figure out what your language is in order to tap into that nucleus. But some people don't, I sense, don't have that particular nucleus for creative obsession and the desire to be constantly looking at the real magic that's out there in the world and finding a way to tap into it. And they don't care. They don't or believe in it or ever want to believe in it,
Yeah.
And so that's what has always attracted me, I find, to other people like me. Circling back to what I said at the beginning of this conversation, is that you start to sense that in a person, and you may connect with a musician even though they don't draw or paint. You have that same inner self.
Yeah.
So, but you got to have that in order to be, I think, a good Imagineer. Even, for example, is you've got to still actually, even though you're not 9 years old anymore, you still have to believe that there's some magic still out there, and you're damn gonna find it.
And you want to be part of it. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I do.
I was going to say, want to go ahead, Rick?
Well, I was just going to say, I have always worked in kind of the creative field since probably 1979. Yes, okay. But I've noticed that I have worked taking jobs in what you would call a blue collar industry. I'm kind of in one right now. Like, I work at Disneyland, okay, and I work in parade maintenance. Now we have the staff shop, which is myself and another guy, Ray Brown. There is right next to us is Deco, the flower, feathers, and all that kind of stuff. And we have a couple of really excellent painters. But most of these guys are audio engineers, electronics. We have electrical, machinists, mechanics. The whole gambit. And so there's this combination of blue collar, and then the white collar, which is usually management. And then there's us, which are, as somebody said, is purple collar. I don't know what color we are, or maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I found sometimes it's very hard for me to relate to somebody that all they think about is getting their boat out onto the lake over the weekend, or what team's going to win. Those guys. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
see where that's important to you. I got to go to the bathroom. But those of us that do creative things there, we gravitate towards each other. There is that energy. Sometimes you can just be in the room with me. You don't even have to say anything, but the juices are flowing. And I've often thought, and I don't know how to tell Imagineering this, but I've often thought that if a person wants to go to Imagineering and be a designer, they need to do maybe like service and go do 2 years of some form of maintenance at Disneyland for 2 years, because I guarantee you will design totally different.
Yeah. I think that's amazing.
Those of us that have to crawl in and out of these things to maintain them are wondering, what, who gave this guy a pencil? You know?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's funny, but the reason I say that is because I remember the first sculpture I did that I wanted to make a mold of. I have never sculpted the same way since. That was a hard thing to mold.
Yes.
Oh my God, I feel sorry for mold makers. And so I've never really sculpted the same way since.
Yeah. No, I understand.
But
it's
it's
yeah.
and I'm still there. I'm still at Disneyland. I'm getting old, so I'm probably getting pretty much over it. I'm ready to retire if I could. But there's still some wonderful people there. There's still some wonderful ideas. But I do believe there should have been a closer relationship.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. There's other careers that have you do that. I know. I mean, I know it's quite a different career, but I had a couple of friends who were trying to coax me when we were still in high school to go into the sheriff's department, and they're like, "Yeah, screw college and this and that, and let's just go." All three of us were close buddies, and we thought we were tough. We were always lifting weights, and we were all, we'd be great cops, and the two of them ended up going, but I remember they said the toughest part of it is that the sheriff's department makes them spend the first at least year. I don't know how, I can't remember how long it was, working in the jails.
Mm-hmm.
And so they come face to face with just about every type of criminal or potential criminal personality you could ever have to. And it prepares them a lot, they said, for recognizing behavior and different things when you get on the street and get into patrol and all that other kind of stuff. And it's a whole, a system of learning. This is just like you're saying, I think that, which comes to mind, and I won't elaborate too much on it because I'm going to elaborate on it in my next podcast. But I used to get criticized at Imagineering, and I didn't know I was doing anything wrong. Once again, but when I grew up on watching Sundays, The Wonderful World of Color, and several of the episodes Walt Disney used to go and show, and I heard first accounts from people who worked with him that there were days when he would just leave the studio and go to Disneyland and try to stay as incognito as he could, but he would just watch people experiencing the rides and attractions, and get on the rides and time the rides and see how people did things. So naive me, I thought, well, I was hired there as a director level because I had just come out of Universal Studios as a director of attraction development at the time.
Okay.
So nobody sat me down and said, these are the rules of being an Imagineer. You are to spend exactly X amount of time sitting on your desk. And so I was thinking, my example was watching what I thought Walt Disney used to do and the responsibility he would take. And just circling to exactly what you just said. So there were days when I'd say, I'm going down to the park today. I'm doing fine on what I'm working on. I'm on schedule. I'm going to go down to Disneyland and slip my silver pass so I can just walk on the park, and I'm going to watch people for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that on a number of occasions. And then I got reprimanded at one point. Someone, I won't name names, but someone told me, who was watching over the department, that Tom, some people are talking that sometimes they look in your office and they don't see you sitting there at your desk, and they find out you're at Disneyland. and I went, yeah, okay. Well, what was your point? Well, you can't do that. because people are sitting here working, and you just don't just get up and go to Disneyland in the middle of the day. You're not. They're saying you're not spending enough time sitting there hunched over your desk.
Man.
And I was like, that's ludicrous. That's like telling a surgeon that if they wanted to go walk in and observe a triple bypass that another surgeon was doing for an experience of some new technology or whatever, that you're telling them that they shouldn't be doing that. They should be sitting in their office waiting until their next surgery or reading books. But I got reprimanded for that. And it was my naive idea that Walt would have done it. Walt did it.
Yeah.
And that as a designer, I had the responsibility of watching people, seeing what they did, noticing the fact that if I made a really cool looking, and I heard a similar thing in the bamboo posts in Indiana Jones by a maintenance guy ride, that you never think of as a designer that you want to do these real cool posts with the chain in the waiting area, and the top of the post maybe has an open mouth of a fish on it. And you find out that people are going to take all their garbage and their gum wrappers and stick it in the mouth of the top of that fish.
Oh, yeah.
And you wouldn't know that unless you go down to the park and, as a designer, observe these things and look at and see. I think you go, never would have thought of that. I better not do anything like that in anything I design, because people will abuse it. So
that's the classic know your audience, right? You want
to
know your audience.
Know your audience.
And I remember, this was back. Maggie Elliott was in the meeting, and we were getting told that change is constant, and John Horney was writing all those changes just around the corner cartoons that he was doing.
Yeah.
Spoke up and said, aren't we just a little concerned that we're going to get so used to change all the time that we're not going to actually settle into anything that's significant?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I'm playing Twister on a waterbed. This is kind of and Mickey Steinberg frowned at me, and Maggie Elliott looked over at Marty and says, he's got a point. But I always attribute the fact that I didn't stay too long at Imagineering was because I had a horrible reputation for not being able to keep my mouth shut.
You and I both.
If I saw something that didn't stick right or sounded stupid, I would say so.
Yeah.
But I didn't say so in terms of, okay, you're an idiot. But I would say it in a way that, okay, here's another solution. Here's an idea. Right. How about we expand what you're talking about and we do it, add some of this stuff onto it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was just too vocal. I was told that I was, there were guys in the model shop that liked kind of the library silence. I was way too loud.
Yeah.
I was way too loud. I like to dance around the model shop and whistle tunes that would get us stuck in somebody's head and then make them mad at me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I liked that. I got to the point where I was doing 2 or 3 projects at the same time. And then somebody would say, "Oh, well, he's never at his desk. He's never here. He's never." Well, yeah. And I got all those projects done. And now, as near as I can figure out, didn't the model shop just make money?
Right, exactly.
Because each one of them had like a 2 or 3 week deadline, and I got it done in a week.
Yeah.
But that somehow that part didn't register, I guess. So I kind of took the hint. I went over to Tahunga, back and forth. I'd go back and forth from model shop to Tahunga. Tahunga I always liked because everybody was loud over there, and so it was okay. then I fit right in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do agree. There's like, and I can say this out loud. I work on the floats for the parades at Disneyland and the props and some of that stuff. But I was telling them, they said, "Oh well, the driver needs some padding behind his head, and I know you guys have the right glue and the rubber for that." And I'm, yeah, that's fine. I got that stuff. I can get in the float, but you're going to have to get the crane over here to get me back out, because they just don't make them easy to get in and out of. I'm thinking, somebody needs to sit down with the guy designing these things and say, "Hey, look, we need a door here, okay?"
Yeah. They don't think about that part.
No. They just want the pretty part.
Common sense.
Yeah.
They don't understand how everything's got to fit inside that pretty part and make it last for 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny because having not worked in that department. How do the guys, the float guys, are they looking at the ground at something, or they can they actually see out the front of the float?
They usually can see out the front of the float.
Oh, okay.
There are perforated screens. Okay. They can see out the front of the float. And in some instances, they have video monitors.
Oh, I got it.
So they can see around them. But there is always somebody out in the audience that has to do the knuckleheaded thing. I don't know if you guys saw that. There was some lady at DCA ran out and jumped on one of the floats to have her picture taken.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Man.
Jumped right on the float as it was moving.
Holy smoke.
Yeah, as I understand it, they got pictures of her all over the place. She's never allowed at Disneyland again.
Yeah, she better have enjoyed that because that was her last ride.
Her 15 seconds of fame, yeah.
And those floats are very, we were lazy. We were trying to get our way back to the front of the park a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we took the train because I love the train. I love the primeval world. I love those dinosaurs, I love that musty smell that kind of
Me too.
comes up the earthy. So we got stuck right where the float, I guess it's like it must take them from inside to outside, like a gate thing.
Correct.
And they were waiting for the train, or we were waiting for them. They were waiting for us. And it was the Cocoa float. And it was beautiful. I actually had enough time that I could look at it and see everything that was, because, they're always moving and there's 10,000 people in front of you and you can't see anything. So I just snapped away. I was snapping photos going, oh my God, this is just amazing. But now to your point, Rick, I could see it certainly looks amazing, but if you had to climb inside that thing, it's got to be.
Yeah, good luck.
It's got to be like working on a helicopter or something.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, to a lot of the designers' credit, they don't have a lot of experience with materials.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I kind of was mentored by a guy, Al Harias, and he was in production design, and he was like an amazing guy. He would give me a drawing and a certain amount of hours, build this thing out of foam core.
Mm-hmm.
So I would build it, and he would base his finished drawings on how many questions I asked and what they were.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he was done, you could build this thing and not have to ask anybody anything. I mean, he was amming.
That's great.
I don't care if he's working on toilet seats at Disneyland, I'll work on his project because I know it'll be right on.
Yeah.
But then again, he used to design and build boats. Okay, well, so he knew something about material.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys, when they're designing, they don't really understand something about materials. So we get a lot of floats that are extremely fragile.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And somehow they forget that, first of all, there's these things are like up to 8-10 tons. Steel, hard rubber wheels, no shocks. And you're going over railroad tracks and cobblestone.
Yeah.
And it's got to last 5 years. Okay, I can't even last 5 years doing that. I wouldn't even. So it is funny because yes, there's always something on one of the floats. Something broke off, something snapped off. Honestly, sometimes we're our own worst enemy. I go around and hit something and I just broke that while I was trying to get to this. That kind of thing. But it has been very fun. I like this particular department that I'm in because something different every day. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
And the ones that are the same thing, we try and rectify that to where, okay, we don't have to do that for another 3 or 4 weeks. But for the most part, it's like, it's a different thing every day. So you gotta invent on the fly, and that part I've always thrived on, as I wanna make something, but I got to use what I've got here in my hand. And, oh my God,
Yeah. Well, and I have to say, I know that it's probably, I mean, maybe you're used to it, but I always envy the photographs I see you take, because you have to be there so early in the morning sometimes, and you take the most beautiful pictures of Disneyland when the sun is barely thinking about coming up on the horizon, or some gorgeous colors as it is. You're there literally at the crack of dawn.
and it's funny because after COVID, they changed our hours.
No, they did.
I'm there a little bit later now, and the park opens a little bit, like right after we get there. Plus, apparently, some of those pictures made it around to the point where Disney has people now that go around and do that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they have their own photographers. I think they were scared that I was going to come out with a coffee table book or something. but they have their own photographers, and now the employees, cast members, are not allowed to go out there and do that anymore because they say the park is closed. Everything is backstage.
Oh boy.
So I haven't been able to do that since I've been back. But that was like, even when I didn't, there was like days I didn't take a lot of pictures, but it was just the idea that I could go out there for a walk before the place opened up. And I did, rain or shine. I went out there every day. Every day that I went out there every day. And I always saw something new.
Yeah.
Imagine
something I hadn't seen before, or something in a way I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
And for me,
now
the
that I'm a
magic is
California,
still there.
I'm a California resident, so it used to be come to Disneyland and have a week vacation. Going, you go to Hawaii or wherever you have a week, and you want to make sure you do everything that you wanted to do in that week.
Right.
So we would go to the parks a couple times and run around like crazy, to make sure we did what we wanted to do. So now that I'm here, I have a little more leisurely approach, and that's what I find to be the most enjoyable thing, is just strolling, and I can, to some extent, block out, I try to, everything that's going on around me, and I just wander and look for things that Imagineers like both of you put places that you wouldn't expect, or the touch that's there, and it doesn't need to be there, but somebody said, let's put this thing here. And somebody at some point is going to be in the right spot and look up and see it and go, the one I just found recently was, I walked around the back of the Big Thunder Mountain. It's almost sort of, it's like a firm barrier, with the artificial rocks. And sitting up there all by itself, just there, was one of the dynamite boxes.
Plungers.
Plungers, and it's just propped up on a rock with the wires going, who knows where. And I just stood there for about 5 minutes. My wife, Lori, walked by. She said, "What are you looking at?" I said, "Dynamite plunger." And she said,
"That's
what are
so
you talking
cool."
about? I said, "Somebody somewhere along the line when they were designing this thing said, we don't really need to put that there, but that's pretty cool." So I've made that my mission now. When we're there, I'd look around for things that are
little sneaky things that they do.
Things, because it's
in DCA, one of my favorites is you got to be quick because you're facing the right way, but it's on the wrong side of the show part. Is in Little Mermaid, there's Mr. Limpet.
Oh,
really?
He's in there.
Awesome.
I've taken a picture of him once or twice. He's in there.
Oh, I love that.
It always picks me up. I love that.
That's the thing I was thinking when you were both talking about how the creativity versus the bean counting budgetary. And I think back, I see it now in some of the newer stuff that they produce. And I mean, I can still at 60 plus years old, I go on that pirate ride, and I'm still looking to try and see how did that get in that particular spot? How do they make that do that? How does this work? And I can ride it. I don't know how many times I've ridden it, but every single time I get on there, I say, "Oh, look at that! The set, the piece, the fort, the cannons, the guy's sword fight." And and you miss it, and then you go, shoot, I got to go on it again.
Yeah.
And you go on some of the newer ones, and you can go on it once and just go, yeah, okay,
yeah,
there's nothing, there's not that thing that pulls you back in where you want to do it again because there's something in there you haven't seen yet or you haven't caught.
Right.
I think that's lacking a lot now in a lot of new stuff.
Well, and they're going into sorry, Imagineers, but I'm going to tell on you. They're going into some of the classics and the favorite rides. Okay? And the new thing is we're going to put in projections.
I know. I was going to say that. Yeah.
I'm thinking, first of all, Walt would have slapped you silly.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
But secondly, did you improve the show?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Did you enhance the story? Did you make it better?
Yeah.
If the answer is no, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
It's that simple. But a lot of times, I think we're doing things not because they need to be done, but because we can.
Well, yeah. People get intoxicated by technology.
Oh yeah.
And I if I were there working with the current technology we have with the current rear projection, all of the different advancements in having projections of different types, mapping and all that kind of stuff. My goal would be the same way as when I forced myself to learn Photoshop, where I had always sculpted in traditional mediums.
Right.
My objective was how can I take I'm sorry, not Photoshop, ZBrush. Well, Photoshop too with drawing, but ZBrush. I sculpt now a lot digitally, mostly, and my whole objective has been trying to make it not look like that technology was used, and how can I make it look like I pushed that with my thumb rather than with a dial or a stylus. How can I make it look like technology never existed here, and this was done the way it could have been done in a big piece of clay 25 years ago?
Right.
And that's really my biggest goal right now, and it's not as easy as you'd think.
Oh no.
But I'm working on it, and I'm getting there better and better at it.
Oh yeah.
And it's not that and when I say better and better, it's not about using the advantages of the technology. It's hiding the existence of the technology. And I think that's kind of speaking to what you just said, Rick, is that there are certain things that are analog, that are a puppet versus a rear projection in a rock open portal of a part of a high def projection that once was basically an animatronic. I'll call it a puppet, a figure.
Sure.
Well, is it really making it that much better that we're looking at a glowing high def version of Pinocchio dancing or another figure than it is to leave it the way it was,
Exactly.
And that's an interesting argument that I'm sure goes on continually.
I actually remember having a conversation with Marty one time, and I said, it seems to me like I understand that we're trying to know our audience.
Yeah.
But I think we're getting to the point sometimes where we're knowing for our audience.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? We're trying to assume we know what they want.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We know
And Walt didn't do it that way. Walt went out there and played on the stuff. He went from studio to Imagineering to the park.
Yeah.
To the zoo, wherever he went. He was watching people, what they do, how they do it, and why they do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think we do that enough anymore. We're too content to sit in our little cubicles, and
tell everybody what they like.
and tell everybody what they like. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Tom and I talked about this a little while back. I went to Universal Studios because, again, same thing, new to California. I want to go, I haven't gone there. And 90% of everything that we saw or experienced there was some kind of a projection and maybe a seat that moved or a thing that moved, but everything was flat. Just, it was almost like you could just put 5 TVs in your room and play 5 different cartoons and then just sit in your sofa and look around. It was
exactly.
This is not the kind of experience that I'm imagining from Disney. I remember the submarine used to have that sea serpent at the end.
Oh yeah.
The real, and you wouldn't see him. You look out your little porthole and you'd see this thing, and then you'd see another curve, and then finally the face was there, and it was this goofy,
this goofy Google-eyed,
sort of like a giant seahorse, and you were like, oh my God, that thing's in the water. But now it's, you see a projection of a fish in the water, and
now it's Finding Nemo now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm sure, for kids growing up in this era, they don't know the difference. Kids have iPads in their hands. My nephew's kids already are learning. At a couple years old, they're already being learning on iPads and that sort of things. So they won't maybe I mean in a way maybe we are just talking like old fashioned curmudgeons here. Maybe there will come a generation that has no idea what we're talking about and the charm in it. But then again, maybe the pendulum will swing and people will get so sick of CG and AI and the sterility in it that they'll go back again to some of these traditional mediums.
Yeah,
absolutely. I do. I want to make sure that the listeners understand that I wouldn't trade my experiences at WDI for anything. It was absolutely amazing. The good, the bad, the ugly, whatever, it was all good for me.
Yeah.
I grew a lot, and I don't really have anything really bad to say about it. I wish possibly that we could have the cycle go back to where the creatives are in charge instead of the bean counters, but that's always been the argument between the creatives and the bean counters. So
it's true.
Ending battle, right?
Yeah, it'll settle its way. The cream will. What my grandma used to say, the cream will rise to the top or whatever. I mean, it's going to work its way out, and if the pendulum is going to swing the other direction eventually. So
well, it's interesting. I remember, and this was in Denver. I wanted to be an animator in the worst way. I read every book that I could find on animation, and there were 5. And one of the books was like 20 pages on how to scratch things on the film itself. And then I found Disney's Illusion of Life. And that wasn't so much a how to, but a why to. And so I built my own animation desk and camera stand, the whole thing in my basement. And I practiced as much as I could. The downside was I couldn't really afford a lot of film to waste. So, and I found that there was one animation studio in Denver, Stan Phillips and Associates. And they were the only one around. No one ever told me that there was any school or anything that you could go to learn animation. So I kept calling them. I wanted to be an animator. And finally, one of the last times I called in there, one of the lady who answered the phone called back to Stan and said, "Stan, it's that Rick Pest guy again. And so I finally got a lunch with the guy, and he spent 2 hours trying to talk me out of animating.
Yeah.
And I basically, I want a test. Okay, I just want a pencil test. I will come. I'll clean your place. I'll do all. He says, no. He looked at my portfolio. He says, no, I got some stuff for you I can do. And I worked my way in that place all the way up to I got to be the lead animator on a project, and I realized I can't sit at this table with the light blowing back at me for the rest of my life. I wanted to do it all. I wanted to see what the camera did. I wanted motion control was just getting started. All that kind of stuff. I wanted to do it all. And then one day, Stan brought in a video cassette from ILM, and it was like one of the first computer animated things. It was a bumblebee. And at the end of it, there was a lady that was an animator. She was really good too. I can't remember her name now. But she was in tears because, oh my God, there goes our jobs. We're not going to have jobs anymore.
Yeah.
And Stan came back and said, one of the coolest things I'd ever heard. He says, yeah, you can look at it like that. Or you can become part of that system and because from what I see on this thing, man, them computer guys are really going to need animators.
Yeah.
Because anybody can write a program. Not everybody can animate,
That's right.
And I thought, wow, that was brilliant, because, and it was true. And so I think that the computer CGI, those kind of things have come such a long way in film that the really good ones, the really good directors and the really good movies, you still say, oh man, how'd they do that?
Yeah.
You can't model from the CG and it's like, oh my God, it's somebody learned how to use a tool really well. And that's what it is, a tool.
Yeah.
It's going to be tools, then, maybe you're in the wrong industry.
Oh, very good point.
Yeah.
When you
And
mentioned
I
about
think that's going to be happening, like you said, Tom, more and more where the cycle will come back where people actually want to touch and feel something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to that tactile thing again. And I believe this is going to be my own opinion, theory, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And it's this, that art was actually the very first language. When you think about guys running around in lambskins or none at all, hunting mammoths and things like that, they didn't have very many words. They had ugh, oog, whatever, and they made grunting sounds. So there was body language involved. But when they wanted to explain something, what did they do?
Drew a picture.
Drew a picture.
Yep.
In dirt, on a rock, wherever they could. Now, honest to God, I bet there's some of those cave drawings that were nothing more than Ugg was here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was a lot of them that said, this is the direction you come from when you're hunting the buffalo. Otherwise, you're going to get nailed.
Yeah, exactly.
And from then, it went into maybe some pantomime by the fire at night where the guy put on the fur and he danced around and showed people how to stab with the spear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But before there were words, there was art.
Yeah.
I
did life realist, and we learned that way. And then we had to develop words and got ourselves all confused. But and like I said again, there's people that can argue that one back and forth, but that's my own theory. That's my own belief. Is I think that
I think that's an excellent theory. Yeah, and had that continued, There'd be no such thing as spell check these days, which I would have loved to be the situation. Because more of my text get distorted with autocorrect than anything else.
Oh man, they misspell more words for me than I can't even tell you.
Yeah, I've sent my mom obscene texts accidentally because of autocorrect.
Autocorrect. Yeah.
We could most likely go on forever, but this doesn't mean we can't do this again, and also maybe pick up where we left off, and we're going to meet at Amigos, and we're going to brainstorm about what we're going to talk about next time.
Right on.
All right, I'm going to join both of you this time because I've read about it enough. I think I need the actual experience.
You're more than welcome.
Absolutely. Oh, it's its own kind of magic when we do that. I got to tell you, I've missed it. Yeah.
You know, we basically transport ourselves to some cantina in the depths of Mexico, and nothing else exists around there. Yeah. So
talk about shooting little green army men with our BB guns too. So
there you go.
That's right.
I'm on board for that. Yep.